Welcome to Everything Gaming. It's time to review another game, and today we will be reviewing Horizon Forbidden West. Now, this is a PS5 game. Now, one of the first things I want to mention is that this game has a really great story, a fascinating world that's grounded in our reality in a lot of ways, and exploring this world and seeing a lot of the things that are in it are just really interesting and engaging based on a lot of real world issues we're having these days. And I think it's all done in a very great way. And another thing I want to point out is this game has really fantastic graphics on PS5. It has some of the best graphics I've seen. Just the details in the environments and the characters' faces and such, they're just all really high quality. And I did want to point out that they did solve an issue I had with the first game, which was when you would talk to characters in the first game, they would be very stoic, unmoving. And there weren't really any animations besides their mouths moving, which gave them a very unnatural and stiff look. They definitely solved that in this game, and it comes off a lot better. I liked a lot of the new characters that were introduced, just the overall goal you were trying to accomplish. I really enjoyed it and thought the story, the graphics, everything was just a step up from the first game. And it was a really fun experience. Now, as far as the combat goes, it's got good combat just like the first game. I want to say it runs a little smoother than in the first game, and there are a lot of interesting ways you can take out these robotic dinosaurs and all that stuff. One thing I do want to mention though is definitely with some of the bigger enemies, you can kind of get thrown into a loop. Some of these enemies have very widespread and high range attacks that will knock you pretty much on your ass. And sometimes it takes quite a while for Aloy to get up off the ground, and by the time you do, the enemy will hit you again and you can kind of get stuck in this loop of trying to get back on your feet, which can be a little cumbersome sometimes, but it's not really too bad. And it only really happens with some of the bigger, more threatening enemies. There's a lot more platforming in this one, I want to say. Because, I mean, sure, you had climbing and stuff like that in the first game, but there's a lot more segments where you have to do a lot of platforming. The problem is sometimes the platforming can be a little hit or miss, and, like, you'll very easily miss ledges and grab holds that you should be able to get to even though you're really close to them. And you'll miss them and then lose tons of progress. And so you'll have to pretty much do the platforming a few times before you get it. So that can definitely be frustrating and annoying at times. Another thing I want to bring up is there are a lot of open world games these days. And some of them are really good. Some of them are a little tedious. And one of the reasons I believe that is because sometimes you have a certain amount of main story and the world is just too big for what that story is. Now, I'm not saying you can't have side missions or stuff like that. Of course you want those things, but in some of these open world games, the world does not accentuate the story well. And one thing I liked about Horizon Forbidden West is that it has the right size of game world to explore for the amount of story that's in the game, which solves a lot of problems regarding pacing and how much time you spend walking or riding from point A to point B. And I feel that's really important in an open world game. I guess I could bring up a recent example. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, for what its main story was, it had a very widespread open world, probably the biggest in an Assassin's Creed game I've seen. And there were things in the world, but they were very spread out, which basically came down to spending a lot of time getting from one event or world item to the next one. And so, in my opinion, that affects pacing. But bringing it back to Horizon Forbidden West, I feel that the world size was just right for the amount of game content and story that was in this game. And I do appreciate that it was a more of a middle ground experience. It took me about 30 hours. Um, Sometimes it's nice to have an open world game that's not going to take you 80 plus hours. That can be a little overwhelming, especially if, like me, you play a lot of different video games or just strapped for time. It can be hard to find time to game. So you don't want every game you're going to play to be 80 plus hours, if you know what I mean. So overall, I would say that Horizon Forbidden West for me is, well, I'd say it's a 9 out of 10. If you like the first game, or if you like action adventure open world games, you'd probably really like this one. It's got a great premise, great story, great execution. If you have any review requests or any topics you would like me to bring up or discuss, feel free to leave a comment down below. And as for now, I'll see you next time.